All right. Hi there. My name is Mac Lahman, and thanks for coming to my first live stream. I decided to kick this off because I went to upgrade my personal site from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 and had some composer dependency problems. And this seems to be a constant issue that folks have a hard time discerning. So I figured what a better time than to get into streaming and screencasting by tackling this issue. So we'll go through that today. So first I wanted to show, here's my personal site. It is on 8.9.1 and we're going to get it kicked off to Drupal 9 in this video. So the first thing is I'm not a fan of blindly running Composer Update. So you can run Composer Update and it will update all of your dependencies at once, which means that a lot of stuff gets updated and it can be hard to track what exactly got updated. So we're going to go through and just update the parts of Drupal core that are required. And to do that, we will need to get the core Composer Scaffold module installed, or updated rather. And what this does is this copies in the index.php and a few other things when using Drupal in a Composer template. We need to update the core recommended package as well, because this actually includes Drupal core. And then finally, I also have the dev dependencies package because I have some tests in my site, so I will need to upgrade that as well to make sure that I get up to Drupal 9. Right now, as you see, they're all at 8.8, and we'll show what that means when we deal with packaging. So there is this site, this semver.mwl.be, which helps you visualize your packaging and what kind of versions you would get. So with the upper arrow at 8.8, you will get the following versions as available options. So we're blocked at 8.9 because it says I want at minimum the 8, the major version of 8, minor version of 8 in any patch, and as long as I stay within the major version of 8, I'm okay with it. And as you might have seen with the recent Drupal 8 porting initiative to Drupal 9, there's a lot of this 8.7. Oh shoot, sorry, I forgot to skip over to my other scene. I'm sorry, thank you for that. So let me go back a bit. I will backtrack. Thank you, Scott. So to upgrade to Drupal 9, you need to get all of your core packages upgraded. That includes the core Composer Scaffold package, the core recommended package, and the developer package as well. So that when I mentioned that before, I meant these three packages, which if you're using the standard Drupal Composer template provided by Drupal.org now, these are included with it, and I believe the community Composer template now uses these as well. And so I'll go back to this page right here. So right now I have arrow 8.8, which means at minimum I get 8.8.0 and up to 8.9.1. Because I am not requesting to get the next major version, I want to stay within the major version of 8 and any minor release that is at least 8.8. In a lot of packages, you will see this constraint 8.7.7 or 9. This was added to allow in a lot of modules info.yaml file to allow it to be installed with 8.7.7 minimum or Drupal 9. So a lot of the Drupal 9 readiness patches were just adding this. So I don't want 8.7.7. I don't need to worry about backwards compatibility because it's my own personal site. So I'm going to go ahead and modify my composer.json to 9.0. And as you'll see, the PHP Storm Composer integration is suggesting version numbers, but I wanted to stick with that. So we will update these here. So now I want to run Composer Update with these three packages. So I'll get a terminal up here and copy a command I pre-wrote. So what it does is it updates the core scaffold, core recommended, dev pinned. And the important part here is with dependencies, because Drupal core requires Symphony, Twig, various other third-party libraries. And if you don't specify with dependencies, it will literally only upgrade the 3 packages you provided. And Drupal 9 requires Symphony 4, whereas Drupal 8 allows Symphony 3, so you're going to get an old version of Symphony if you don't provide this flag. So, all right, let's see what happens when we run this. And it will take a little bit because my caches might be stale and it has to figure out all the dependencies. The fun part of Composer. All right, so we'll see here that we got an error with, okay, which one? With core recommended requires Symphony var dumper 5.1.5, and we also had a conflict with installers. So let's just first see why this first problem occurred. So we'll do composer y Symphony var dump. The composer y command shows why something was installed on your project. Okay, so we have drush, and it and then the this package which drush also uses to create a read, eval, print, and loop, the PHP CLI, if you will. So we're going to upgrade drush as well. So we're going to take our previous command. And actually, I'm going to copy it in. Oh, is it better now, Daniel? I'm still figuring out my new microphone. This is all a little bit new. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to copy in a new command, which takes our previous one, and we added drush. So Symphony var dumper was conflicting, and that's a dependency used by drush. So let's also update drush as well. Seems my audio is mono. Okay, I will have to look into that. I don't know if that's a problem with my audio interface that I have, which I'm still learning, or OBS or YouTube. So I will make sure to follow up and look into that. Okay, so now we got another issue on Symphony routing and Composer installers. So we're going to, there's a setting in OBS I have to change for that. Okay, I will do that for the next time instead of accidentally crashing OBS right now for this. Okay, so we're at Symphony installers, so we're going to add the Composer installers to our dependencies to see if we can narrow this down right now. So as you can see, this is where don't install Composer installers because we're getting a conflict. So we're going to now, oh, that decided to copy my entire. Okay, so now we've added Composer installers with drush. We're going to run that as well and see where the next conflicts come down to. And a lot of this is tedious and kind of hunt and peck, but I prefer doing it this way so I can be more explicit in what's being updated and have a better understanding of what's actually in my code base instead of just blindly hacking away at it. All right, so we're now at Symphony config and Symphony routing. So let's see about this. So Symphony routing conflicts with Symphony config version 3. Oh, yep. Daniel, what's the question with my composer file? I'll pop this open. So I have like up arrow 8.8 something. What is with the something bit? I've not seen that in. So before I just had it at 8.8. Oh, so there is also this. I don't know if maybe you mean the like where it has this at alpha or at beta. I'll wait for the chat to come in. Oh, why there's okay, now I see. So this is so this number right here, how it shows 8.9.1, PHP Storm has improved its composer support. So it's actually reading my .lock file and showing me what is currently installed. So I have already changed this from 9.0 or from 8.8 to 9.0, and it was showing that with this 8.8, I had 8.9 installed. One of these required an update, and it would show that. But like here, you can see that admin toolbar, I have the constraint at 2.0 minimum. It shows I have 2.2.0 installed, and it can update to 2.3.0. So this is also kind of nice if you have PHP Storm to be able to review your pending updates without running Composer outdated. Does that answer it, Daniel? Yeah, there was a few plugins that use this, but now it got added as like a quote unquote first class citizen into PHP Storm itself. So that's where those come in. I should have clarified that before, since some folks may not recognize that. All right, so we'll quick back over to here. So as we were going before, we were just slowly picking away at things. We realized that we need to upgrade Composer installers as well. And we're getting Symphony config v3 conflicts with Symphony routing v4. Okay, great. So we have a mismatch here. You can't use major version 3 with major version 4. Let's figure out why we need Symphony config. Okay. Drupal console. Great, we have Drupal console. So let's try updating Drupal console. So again, our command is now update the scaffold plugin, update core recommended, the developer dependencies, Drush, Composer installers, and Drupal console. So even though Composer dumps out a big bunch of mess right here, usually towards the end you can see the major conflicts and kind of discern why something is conflicting, and then use the composer y command to see why that exists in your code base to help determine what needs to be updated and might be conflicting. boom, we now have a whole bunch of issues. And to make the long story short, sorry, we'll go to Drupal console and to the GitHub repo, and it was console core. Oop, sorry. So what happens is, this is not the root plugin. Get to here. I did some research on this before, and there's also a Twitter thread which explains this. But basically, Drupal console is not Drupal 9 ready. It still requires Symphony components at major version 2 or 3. So we have to remove Drupal console before we can move forward. So what we have to do is I have to go back into here. I have to revert these changes back to the original values. Because if I didn't, it would try to remove Drupal console while installing Drupal 9, and it would just keep complaining. So we are going to run composer remove Drupal console. And the reason we're doing this is, even if I were to go into the composer.json and manually delete it and try to run the updates, Composer 1 does not take into account any removals when updating until after resolving dependencies. And I believe in Composer 2 that might be changed, where it does the remove first and then decides on the dependencies with the new state of the composer.json. All right, so now that we have removed Drupal console, let's go back, and we need to edit this to be 9.0. Just gonna copy that. Let's put this back in. On here, as I was saying before, that the PHP Storm plugin, it will show you if there's an update. If I click this, it would actually run Composer Update Drupal Admin Toolbar. So that's kind of nifty. All right. So now that we've removed Drupal console, let's try our command that gives us the scaffold, the core recommended, core dependencies, Drush, and Composer Installers. And this should get us to Drupal 9. Again, thank you everybody for joining in on Sunday. I didn't realize today's Father's Day either, at least when I scheduled it. So happy Father's Day to anybody out there that has kids. I know after this I'll be enjoying my Sunday. And we have another conflict. Okay, so Symphony YAML 4 and installation request for Drush 9 compatible with blah blah blah. Okay, so we have an issue with Drush. One of the first things we could do here is look at the Drush docs, if I can copy the link, which I can't. So we'll go to docs.drush.org, and there is the install page, and in the install page it shows the Drupal compatibility. I currently have Drush 9, which is not Drupal 9 compatible. So when you go to do your upgrade to Drupal 9, you will need to make sure you're using Drush 10. So we can actually, we'll go change this to be 10.0. I don't need to specify the patch anymore because I'm not concerned about staying within a minor version. So now we can run this command again, and we should get an update to Drupal 9. Let that think for a minute. Okay, we have one more, and this is because I actually have the, so we have a few things going on in here. So Swift Mailer is locked at 1.1 and is not satisfiable. The Gout browser, I actually have that as a root requirement because I use it in one of my pieces of code. So we'll go. What I will do is check what is the core dependency version for it, so I can update it here. I believe it's in the root composer.json. No, it's not. Let's check if it's inside of core. No. Okay. I guess what we can do is just add it to, we'll add it to the command. But also we see in here Swift Mailer. So let's look at the Swift Mailer module. If I could spell. So Swift Mailer. I'm currently on version 1. There's version 2, and as we can see here, requires Drupal. The 1.x branch does not support Drupal 9, but the 2.x branch does. So we will go into here and edit the Swift Mailer entry to be 2.0.beta, or at beta rather. And we will go over here. And now we're going to expand our command to update Drush, Composer Installers, Gout, the browser emulator, and Swift Mailer, so we can get those to be upgraded. Because those were the final things shown in our conflicts. And hopefully that is the last bit. One more. Honeypot. Okay, so let's go look at the Honeypot module and see what version supports Drupal 9. Okay, again, 1.x branch, Drupal 8 only. The 2.x branch now supports Drupal 9. So we will go back and make hopefully the last adjustment and go back to our terminal, clear this out. So finally, for my site, I'm updating the core scaffold, core recommended, dev dependencies, Drush, Composer Installers, the Gout browser emulator, the Swift Mailer module, and Drupal Honeypot. And this should remove any of my Composer conflicts that prevented me from getting Drupal 9. And then once this finally updates, I'll make the commit and deploy it, and we can verify that my site updated. And during that time, if anybody has questions for the chat, I'll be able to look at that a little bit more since it takes a few minutes to deploy the site. All right, so we're getting it. We can see here Drupal core from 8.9 to 9.0.0. And I'm going to add my change files. Why did this change? So this file changes due to the scaffold plugin. And that just looks like it's fine to add. So let's do live update to Drupal 9. And then I will push it up. Okay, now what we can do is head over to Circle CI, and my pipeline's building. So for anybody curious, I have it set up to, I have a Kubernetes set up for my personal site, is how I decided to learn Kubernetes. So inside my Circle CI, it builds the image for me and then ends up deploying it. It takes a few minutes, so if there's any questions, you can add them in the chat, and I'll do my best to try to answer them. So Daniel asked if I recommend PHP Storm for Drupal developers. I recommend PHP Storm for any PHP developer. I don't know the exact cost because I've been paying for it for about 5 years now, but I also subscribe to the entire toolbox. I think you should see this drop down come up at least partially. There's a delay on the stream, so it takes me a minute to make sure it showed up. But I subscribe to the toolbox so I can have access to the Golang IDE and also WebStorm for when I do JavaScript stuff. I also like DataGrip, which is their database interaction tool. Overall, I think it saves me a lot of time and makes me more productive, that it pays for itself. And I know a lot of people don't like the idea of paying, so that's why they use VS Code, but PHP Storm also does employ one of like the top PHP maintainers. Nikita, I think is his name. So I recommend it just on the fact that it's supporting open source development. Even though PHP Storm is paid, the core engine, the IntelliJ IDE, is open source. So I recommend it. I think it makes you faster, helps you write a little bit better code, and has impacts outside of, in the greater open source. All right, just an update here. Finished building my image. It's now pushing it to my image repository, which is using the DigitalOcean image repository beta. And now we can go make sure it deploys. So Daniel, I hope that answers your question. I think it pays for itself in about a week of work, in the amount of time that you save. DDev versus Lando. So, I use DDev because I found that first. I did not like Calabox, which Lando is the kind of successor of, but not really. I contributed a few things to DDev. It's my personal favorite. It reminded me of some local tooling that I was able to do. So I use DDev. Anecdotally, I find that the Lando containers, or at least the images, are slower. So I have worse performance when using Lando locally than I have when using DDev. But again, I have no proof to back that up. It's all anecdotal and just based on what I perceived is going. And then I'll answer the next question and we'll see if the update happened. So Nia, for modules like SwiftMailer, you update it from a major version to another. Do you have a chance to check if there's an upgrade path between the two major versions? I did not, so I very well could have just upgraded my SwiftMailer and broke all my configurations. And I use a lot of blind faith in the fact that it's just a module that sends email. So normally I would check that. I would do more scrutiny over all of that. But since the emails just go to myself, and it's not as mission critical, I was lazy. Yeah. But normally I would sit and like review things. I would do like a full code review between the two major versions to make there's an upgrade path. The full bit. Okay, so it deployed. For some reason, I can't get this to work right when I deploy because it uses a Redis sidecar and it tries to connect to the Redis sidecar before it's completely done deploying. I don't know, but my site should now be updated and live in the Kubernetes deployment. So if I refresh this page, I got an error. Well, then, this is what I get for trying to do it live and not actually testing it locally. So, this is why you always test stuff locally, because you never know what could happen. So I'm going to look at the code snippet module now and see if they fix this in dev and run a new quick hotfix. Yep, okay. So to update it, I am just going to go pick the dev because there's no release. And I'm going to run composer update Drupal code snippet. And Drupal 9 compatibility. There is no release. So here's all the various, there's the comments where they fixed this. Okay. Tag new release for Drupal 9 compatibility. Yes, so I actually was reached out to do a guest blog post on Circle CI for doing a Kubernetes deploy, and I would like to write about that too, maybe even a video for those interested. The problem is they asked me right when I got hit with COVID and the quarantine hit, so that kind of fell through and I didn't really have time, and I'm just now getting above water. Or I've been above the water for a few weeks, but I need to circle back on that and write about it. So that is something I would like to write and explain, like how to do things in Kubernetes with Drupal. So I'm just going to write this issue real quick, asking for a tagged release. But since I have to do another redeployment, I can at least cover some of what I do to try to make my deployments work. All right. So I created the issue asking for a release for the code snippet. You know, as a module maintainer, it never hurts to get a nudge. Like if there is like some stuff that hasn't been released yet and is causing issues like these don't hurt. Just maybe search if there's one beforehand, if it's a bigger module. All right. There's that. We now have the dev release from Drupal code snippet. if I do a diff, I'll see that it was updated. So let's do, whoa, hold on. So make sure I add the libraries and my composer files. So git AV, update code snippet, git push origin master. All right, and while this goes, and I make sure that I uncrashed my site, I'll just quick show a preview of some of the Kubernetes things that I run. So circle CI. So it goes in here, connects with my registry, downloads the Kubernetes CLI. In order to connect, you have to have your cluster certificate. So I have that as an environment variable that then gets pushed to the disk. And then I run a makefile that customizes my manifest to use the latest image hash. And then I run a apply command with all the fun certificates and tokens. And this is what modifies the tagged image. And when it applies, the image change basically causes Kubernetes to do a new deployment. And during a CI process, what I do is to do a rollout status check. And this causes it to hang and wait for the rollout to finish of a deployment. It says, okay, the old one was taken down, the new one is up. And then I find the deployment pod. And I use Redis for my caching, and this is where sometimes it gets weird when I create a new deployment. I have a sleep 20. This doesn't seem to make a difference, but I use first president. Okay. So you use some people say kube cuddle. I say kube control. I can't say kube cuddle. So kube control exec, and then in my namespace, a deployment pod, all the fun stuff, and then just bash. So just like you would in platform.sh, where you say deploy, you say run these commands, or in any Acquia pipelines. It's the same thing, but it has all the Kubernetes stuff in front of it. That's it. It's not too verbose, but it gets the job done. Okay, so that's pushing. Okay, question came in. Looks like the first message he sent it. Okay, okay, I'll wait for that first half of Marco's message to come in. Oh, there it is. For some reason, it's not showing up on my half here. So JetBrains provides free licenses to students and faculty for their academic licensing program. If your university is not accredited, check out JetBrains SWOT repo on GitHub and add domains according to the README. Okay, so if you are using it for academic purposes or a student, you can get access to their projects, but that's if you're not doing it for profit. If you're doing it for learning, contributing to open source, you can use those. But this is part of my day job, so that's one reason I pay for it, and because I'd be violating their terms. All right, so the hotfix to get code snippet deployed is out. For kicks, I'm gonna rerun this at failed, and this is the weird part with my deployment. When I rerun it from failed and it doesn't have to do another deployment, the commands work. But while that's going, so I make sure that upgrades happen. We'll check my status page again. Hopefully there's no more surprises. Hey, there we go. So we're at 9.0.1. I broke my site. So before you go update your Drupal 9 site, you should always test it locally to make sure you didn't completely break everything. So that's going to be my lesson. And I will tackle those off of this stream because it will be quite a bit of a change. All right, let's see if maybe the upgrade here made a difference. All right, my site's a little broken, but it's not too bad because I failed to do this locally and make sure I updated everything, like these modules and my own custom theme. So actually, we'll quick fix some of my custom ones real quick, so you can see how you're able to update your custom modules. So I'm just going to steal it from here. So this is what matters. Core version requirement. It uses the same semantic versioning constraints as Composer. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and add it to my modules that need it, because I failed to do this ahead of time. I don't even know if this is installed anymore. Also, if your contrib modules do not contain a composer.json, this is one reason I like if they do, because this should have been prevented from upgrading if the discuss modules didn't say it was Drupal 9 ready in its composer.json. So we'll quick fix those. Let's see if I can get so we've got media entity browser. Let's see if I can get this one as well. And schema.org website. I'm going to assume I just need to update this entirely. So again, always test locally and never just cowboy and throw it up into your live site, because you'll have problems like I just experienced. So thanks for coming. Or is there any questions first before I sign off and finish picking these off one by one? Are there any other questions that folks have before I sign off? Daniel asks if I'll be doing more streams. Yes, that is my goal. I don't know if I'll be doing like weekly ones, but I do want to try to make some like short form screencasts as well, like quick ones. Oh, Discuss is not ready for it. So I plan on doing more. Maybe I'll make them a weekly thing on Sundays. or I'm going to release some more smaller videos along the way. I've got about 11 things in the pipeline for it. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I do want to do more instead. Miro asked, why Redis instead of Memcache? I've had some horror stories with Memcache in the fact that once you hit a certain cache size, it starts exploding. I'm trying to remember what the limitations are, but let's say that you can only have, it's like a Memcache size limits. I can't remember, but there's like some odd. So the maximum size of an object is 1 megabyte, but I thought it was 2. But if you have a cache item that's 2 megabytes or more, or this 1 megabyte, it starts sharding that cache object and trying to place it all over the place. And you can cause like a cache stampede because it's trying to decide how to chunk up this cache object and put it into memory. I've had worse performance problems with Memcache. I've had Drupal sites perform better without Memcache than with Memcache. This could be Memcache configuration, maybe Drupal, I don't know. But I like Redis because it's faster, doesn't have the size constraints, and it seems to quote unquote just work a little bit better for my needs. So that's why I use Redis. And Discuss is not Drupal 9 ready. So before you go update your sites, make sure that all the modules are actually Drupal 9 ready. See if I can apply a patch. Does that answer your question about Redis and Memcache? It's not a personal preference. Redis is also newer and more scalable than Memcache. So it's a little bit easier to work with. And if you have any topics that you'd like to have covered either in a stream or as a video, I'm open to suggestions. You can either leave them in this chat. I actually have no idea what happens to this chat after I stop the stream, or as you could leave it as a comment afterwards, or hit me up on Twitter. Send your suggestions because I would love to do this more, especially if it helps folks, learn along the way. Any other questions? All right, you have suggestions? Which I'm all open for because this is all very, 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 very new to me. Config, split, ignore, and override. I don't actually use any of those, so I don't have much to speak about. Now, there's one time I needed a config ignore, and we just wrote our own custom way to do that because we didn't need the huge dependency tree that comes around with supporting that. The most common use case that I see is folks wanting a module to not be installed in production, and Drupal core now has a way to do that if I can find it. So with Drupal 8.7, I think, or it is 8.8, there's this new settings called config exclude modules, and it allows you to prevent a module from being exported as installed. And out of all of my use cases, the only reason to use like a split or an ignore is to disable modules to make sure they don't get deployed into production. And then for otherwise, I use config overrides for everything. I don't want to open mine just in case I expose any of my API keys in here. I don't have a safe environment to do so with. And to manage dev stage prod configs, we use environment variables and settings overrides. We don't need config split to have them exported, because all of our differences, especially in like e-commerce sites, the differences are API keys, which you don't want committed in your config anyways. So they're all environment variables. But I will make note of that as a content idea. 1 second, I'm getting that open to discuss that more and how you can do config split and managing those, and managing with or without. And then also before I talk about like how to write custom commands for ddev. So I actually don't have any custom ddev commands because I haven't had a reason to really write them. But that would be a great time to dive into it and see what that's like. See this. Ah, man. So I can't update discuss because it is incompatible with Drupal core. So I'm blocked, but hopefully this helped some of you be able to discern these composer updates and learn a few tricks along the way. I'm going to be signing off, so thank you so much for everybody that joined in. I would love feedback in the comments once this is all done, and I'm going to keep plugging away at trying to get my site to work. All right, thank you so much, everybody.